So it's got a lot to do with where we come from. I think that influences where we are going and the type of stories that we put out, and the responsibility that we have to bring authenticity and to pay not justice but to pay tribute or homage to your people, to the stories that you want the world to hear.
Christo, it's so lovely to talk to you here on Zoom.
Great. It's great being here. Finally being able to make it.
Yeah. And you said you are based in Johannesburg. Is this where you grew up as well?
No. I am originally from a place called Mitchell's Plain in Cape Town.
Yeah.
And at the age of 9 years old, we moved to the Southern Cape, to a small town called Heidelberg, because my parents thought it better to bring their children up on what we call in South Africa the platteland.
Okay, yeah. And is this where because you're an actor in South Africa?
Yeah, I haven't really acted for the last 7 years.
Yeah.
I have primarily been producing, writing, and directing. I did my last play in 2015 called Cinder in the Suburbs. That's written by a very prolific South African writer, PG Du Plessis, in 2015, and then I changed my focus to directing. And then from directing, I started producing for TV and writing for TV and directing for TV. So,
wow.
But last year I had the opportunity after COVID to direct a play again. So I directed in January, I directed Joni Galant, the Adam Small play at the Market Theatre. And I just recently came back from Cape Town where I directed a season show at the Baxter Theatre, Platform 9.
So now from being an actor to directing, which do you prefer?
Well, look, they're all different disciplines and they all require a different part of you. They all have a different emotional investment. So for me, it depends on where I find myself. Last year, I was part of a poetry project for the Art Club Arts Festival in South Africa, in the northern part of the Northern Festival, if you want to call it that. Art Club, and I was part of a poetry project that was performed live. And when I walked onto that stage, it felt familiar again. It felt like, oh, I remember this. I remember this feeling. And then something kicked inside of me. And now this year, I want to see what other acting opportunities there are outside.
Were you nervous then getting on stage in such a long time?
I'm nervous in general.
Oh, okay.
That's why I prepare to death. I over-prepare so that I don't get caught off guard. But yeah, I'm always nervous before I walk on. And that feeling in your stomach, that feeling of wanting to go to the toilet, that feeling of going, I'm not going onto the stage. They must do this without me. All of that just flashed back, but eventually when you walk on, again, something in you opens and somehow you understand why you're alive.
Yeah. But now this is so interesting that you said originally you come from Mitchell's Plain, which is for people who don't know, it's almost inner city, isn't it, in Cape Town?
Yeah, it's also referred to in South Africa as the Cape Flats.
Okay.
After the forced removals of 1966, the apartheid regime, when they separated the people, moved all the colored people to what is known as the Cape Flats, which consists of Manenberg, Hanover Park, Lavendale, which the biggest suburb is Mitchell's Plain. So yeah, the stigma around a place like Mitchell's Plain is not great. But history is most of the times written by the outsider.
Yeah.
It's very weird at times for me, or ironic at times for me, where your story is told by someone who's never lived there.
Yeah, no, that is really true that you're saying that, and of course, when you talk to people who live there, then they have the real, they talk about the real people and the real life situation that you have there.
Look, it's dangerous, but it's dangerous everywhere.
Yeah.
There's no country in this world that doesn't have an area where you go to where you feel, oh, this is dangerous or this is dodgy.
Yeah.
It all depends on how places are sold, and it's the same with story. It's how a story is sold. It's that's why I always feel that a writer has got one of the biggest responsibilities, because he can shift the consciousness.
Yeah.
He can influence a train of thought. He can build up or he can break down, because there is no such thing as objective writing. There is no such thing as an objective story. It's whether it's a journalist or whether it's a playwright or a novelist, there is always first and foremost the subjective side of it, because it comes from you. Story comes from you. You the one sitting with that pen or behind that keyboard. You the one in control of the narrative.
Yeah. No, that's true. How much did this experience that you have, or this experience from Mitchell's Plain and having that sort of background, how much does that influence how you see or how you direct or how you produce your work? Do you think that has an influence?
I think where we come from, where anybody comes from, has got an influence of how he approaches or perceives a certain piece of work. I've always thought of Romeo and Juliet as these two, because it's a play about gangsters, right? It's two mafia houses that's fighting each other. And two star-crossed lovers that's caught up in the middle of that. So for me, when the first time I came across that play, I'll never forget. In what we call here grade 8, standard 6. I was about 14. And my grandfather was a very prolific South African actor, Christo Davids. And that was one of his favorite stories, that Julius Caesar and the Merchant of Venice. And I remember specifically when I heard that story, I thought that story happened in Mitchell's Plain.
Really?
I thought, wow, that's great. And then they shot each other. And then there was a gang fight. And then eventually the one killed the other one. And then the one had to flee after killing the guy who killed his friend. And then, because all of that for me was like, oh yeah, I know that story. That's where I come from.
Amazing.
So it does have an impact, and it does have an influence of how you think and how you approach certain things and the type of work that you choose to do. I think a very prominent figure of that type of authenticity in his storytelling is a filmmaker, Martin Scorsese. A lot of Martin Scorsese's work deals with his background, with his experiences, where he comes from. It's New York Italian. There's a certain way these people move. There's a certain way they speak, and we are drawn in and intrigued by that, because although we've heard about it, here's somebody on the inside showing us this is life. This is how it works. It's the same thing with his films. Look, if it's not a gangster film, he's going to make a film about religion, right? So, and then once he made a comedy, but so it's got a lot to do with where we come from. I think that influences where we are going and the type of stories that we put out, and the responsibility that we have to bring authenticity and to pay not justice, but to pay tribute or homage to your people, to the stories that you want the world to hear.
Yeah, and you're right. You're talking now about comedy as well, but it's also true that in situations like that, where, like you say, people look from the outside and they just see the terrible things, but there's also this wonderful humor that you have in South Africa, where people take in the most difficult situations, they have this humor that sort of brings them out or takes them out of it. Yeah.
Look, there's a lot of things floating around the world for the last couple of years about mental health and depression and stuff like that. And my aunt said, she lives in Mitchell's Plain, and she said, what is this with depression? What? I never, because she heard about, oh, this is what it means and this is what depression actually is. And she said, oh, I thought that's just life. I thought that's just how things work, We struggle, wake up, we struggle, we go to work, we come home, we wake up tomorrow morning again, we struggle, we come home, it was just a way of life. It's just a cycle.
Yeah.
and that's what I mean with the influence that it has, and how different people, in a story, different characters perceive different emotions in 3 different ways, or one perspective in 3 different ways, right? It's the same that if was Hedda Gabler not that ambitious, how would that marriage have turned out? Would she have just caused all this disruption in her world? But because it was her normal, because she was searching to go back to what was normal to her, what she needs out of it. There's a great example, the fabulous playwright John Osborne from England, who wrote Look Back in Anger, where it doesn't matter what happened at the end, that woman came back. He was the biggest a-hole in the world, but that was her normal. That was what she needed to survive. She needed that. Streetcar Named Desire. Blanche Dubois comes to visit her sister, Stella, and there's this guy, Stanley Kowalski, who needs to step into his manhood. So they're disrupting his world because they're forcing him to take responsibility. They're forcing him to become a man. They're forcing him, showing him that, no, we are not subservient to you. We are on equal ground, and that's not his normal. So these things, they've got a way of weaving themselves through the stories that we see, and somehow or the other manifest in something or some way that we identify with things that we look at. That's why I always believe we fall in love with stories. That we see. That's why stories always been around since the beginning of time. It's because we need something to latch onto. We need something that we can go, oh, that feels familiar. Oh, that looks familiar. Oh, look, there's me. Oh, that's not me. I don't like that guy. That guy reminds me of that part of my life. Or I like that guy. He reminds me of the good of my life. It's all of those things that culminates, that makes us do what we do.
That's absolutely true. Yeah, I haven't thought of that way, but yeah, that's true. But now, in what was it then? You said your uncle was also an actor. So was it that inspired you to do acting? What as a young child?
My grandfather was a actor through the apartheid years, up until he did his last film at 82. And 2 of my uncles, Lloyd Davids and Peter John Davids. Lloyd Davids is a playwright, and Peter John Davids is a director, a theater director. So I come from a family of actors. Really, I'm the 4th best.
Okay.
But we grew up in that house, like with stories. I was taught poems by my grandfather that I never understood. Why is he telling me? Why is he teaching me this? Why do I need to know these things? While your friends are playing cricket or soccer outside in the street, and you standing, in his living room reciting some Adia Keet poem. But it's only as I got older and started pursuing acting as a career where I started realizing what that training meant for me now. Because I made my professional acting debut at the age of 11 opposite my grandfather in a television series called Onder Engele in 1994, when it was still called TV1.
Oh, really?
Yeah, many years ago. And then I did a lot of other things afterwards. I was in Nieuwlanders and Hagenheim Streng Privaat and all these. I used to, whenever they needed a kid, a lot of the times I would be that boy. So when I got to matric, I really wanted to go study theater, because by then I've invested a lot in this profession and in this industry, and I've read, by the time I got to matric, I've basically read everything that Ethel Fugard has written. But somehow my grandfather thought that's not a good idea for me to study theater. He got me to the business, and then he said, no, I don't think it's a good idea for you to go study theater. Because he also always believed that what you know is enough. You'll discover as you go on. What you know now is what you need. Go study something else. Then I ended up studying a law degree, LLB, and I graduated in 2006. And then I took the law degree home, I gave it to them, and then I moved to Joburg to go act.
Oh, okay. Wow. But so this was always at the back of your mind that you will be acting.
Through varsity, I've always been in productions.
Okay.
I think I made quite a good name for myself while doing all these main stage plays while studying law. So I learned a lot, and I also look. This thing comes with a hell of a discipline, right? And respect for it. If you don't respect it, it won't respect you. And that's a general rule in life anyway. But it taught me a discipline, and it taught me hard work, and it taught me how, if you want to achieve something, 100% is never enough. See how far you can stretch yourself, but don't stretch yourself so far that you lose yourself. So it's all of those type of things that has kept me going. It's the driver. There's always something new. There's always something new to learn.
Mm-hmm. But now in South Africa, it's not so easy because the many theaters are closed down. And what are the possibilities for you? How easy is it for you to say put up a production?
No, it's not.
Really?
No. I don't think it's easy for anyone to go up and put up a production, unless you're Cameron McIntosh, who did Les Mis for 25 years or 30 years. Unless you come up and say, I'm the new Tennessee Williams. But for us in South Africa, it is difficult because we don't have proper government support for the arts. The Department of Arts and Culture is not really in the interest of the arts. The little that they give serves this much, right? So the rest are all out there on their own, trying to fringe and trying to make a buck, where you have to stand in the wings and start counting the audience as they walk in to see who's getting paid tonight. It is very difficult here, and it's primarily because of government support. It's primarily because the government has no real. Our Minister of Arts and Culture, of sport, sports and arts and culture is the same thing here, right? It's under the same banner. Sport, arts and culture is the same thing. And that will never work. But yeah, things can be better. Theater or performing arts has got a huge platform. It has changed the world in a significant way. It's always contributed. It told how many stories about apartheid while apartheid was on. Protest theater was one of the things that came out and gave people the message of what's really going on. People risking their lives to tell a story, to change a mind, to change a perspective. But in South Africa, say, who did work, I'll say, it's not something that our government is taking serious, and that is why artists suffer. There was a relief fund during the COVID of how many 200 million rand. How many artists saw any of that 200 million?
Really?
That's now just gone. Nobody knows what happened to the 200 million. So you have got a couple of state-funded theaters in South Africa, and then you have independent theaters, a lot of independent theaters, a lot of producing houses. And producing houses, as we all know, can only survive if they support.
Yeah.
Whether it's from the private sector or whether it's from the audience or wherever, or if it's international funding, wherever it's coming from. It's the only way, like the Baxter Theatre in Cape Town, that is run by Lara Foot, who is probably one of the best theatre makers South Africa has ever had. For her, for example, to have kept that theatre alive and open even after COVID is remarkable. It's something that has really happened, or is really done. If you look at the Fugard Theatre, for example, which is such a beautiful theatre that presented excellent work on an international standard that had to close down because of COVID. Because the government didn't step in and say, here is the 200 million. I'm getting a bit carried away with this now. But it's true. And it's not just sensitive to me, it's sensitive to all of us here. It's sensitive knowing that there was no reason for all these people during COVID to, become more depressed than they already are. There was a way out. I'm not saying give each artist 100,000 rand. That's not the point, but it's the same thing with royalties in South Africa. There is no royalty. So you go to America and reruns, people get paid for reruns, they get paid for, unfortunately not here. So you'll have veteran actors that is now 70 years old that can't work anymore, whose stuff are still playing from the 70s. There's reruns of things, but there's nothing in it for them. There's work here that's made in South Africa that has been distributed across Africa, into Europe, into the Netherlands. And where's that? What happened to that? Where's that money going? Certainly not going to the artist. Okay, I'll stop it there.
No, but it's good that you're saying that, because it's also, isn't that also then the thing that becomes a sort of a cycle? Then people don't see the value of it anymore, because nobody wants to go into that. Nobody wants to become an actor because of the way you are treated, or nobody wants to go into the arts because there's no support for the arts. So you are losing very talented people because they don't feel they have the support.
Exactly. It's exactly that. For argument's sake, SAGA, the South African Guild of Actors, has for the last probably 15 years been trying to push a bill through Parliament, just get a bill signed to rectify these things, to get more support, to get a better infrastructure from the government for actors, so that we can operate and feel protected and feel like your people are on your side. But unfortunately, I think when it comes to the hierarchy of things, artists has never really been top of the scale after the Renaissance period.
Yeah, but you talking about the history now, and also about apartheid, and you're saying, okay, so that was a way of telling stories, that was a way of bringing awareness. And isn't that also so important that the children of today have a way to express themselves, or the children of today have a way to, through art or art education, or maybe through acting, to really express how they feel in their situation?
Yes. And to me, it feels that since 1994 up until 2023, it feels like there's more stories to tell now than there was prior to it.
Yeah.
Because apartheid it's one narrative. It's black and white. It's right and wrong. There's no middle way. There's no blur. It's that clear. Where we living in today, in the democratic South Africa as we're living in today, things are blurred. They're gray. Everything has got a loophole. There's who do you trust? There's people that has gone up and people that has gone down. There's people that's gone nowhere, that's stagnated. It was very sad for me. About 12 years ago, I was still working on Seven Line as an actor. And there was a lady working there, Sally. She was a seamstress. And we were talking, and the elections was coming up, I think, at that point. And she and I was saying, no, everybody must go vote. It's your right. You must go vote. People died for us. People fought that we have this right. I just feel we should all vote. And she looked at me and she said, I'm not voting. And I said, but it can't, it doesn't mean you don't have to vote for the ANC. Just vote, then vote for the opposition, vote for. And she looked at me and she said, I think things were better under the apartheid regime. So if someone like that, could come up with a thought like that in the spur of the moment, whether she meant it in that way,
Yeah.
whether it's something she thought about before, whether it's just something that slipped out of her, but it was said, it's out there, it's in the universe, it exists. And it's always stayed with me. Because things were not better.
Mm.
But now we don't know whether it's better or good because it's too gray, it's too blurred, it's too blocked off. It's like, you guys exist here, and then we will tell you what you need to know when you need to know. There's people walking around with, yeah, I know I don't want to go into all political debate about it.
But it's
Arts
that
and politics has always been like this, right?
yeah, but it's that uncertainty. It's uncertainty. Like you say, if it's very much wrong or right, then at least you know where you stand. But if it's that uncertainty, then it's sort of difficult. But now, for what is the situation now for children, for example? Do you see projects? Do you see enough projects where children get the opportunity to do some form of art, either dancing, acting, or singing in that sense?
There's a lot of it. There's a lot of those programs. But what is the sustainability and the longevity of these things? We also have quite a few arts festivals in South Africa. Quite a few. And to start something, give a man a fish and he'll eat for the day. Teach a man how to fish and you feed him for a lifetime. So having a program run for 2 weeks or of 3 days and say, come, this is arts and culture, this is how we do it. And then teaching children the basics of acting and then walking away from it and never following up on it, or never putting a representative there going, okay, right, this is the next thing that's in place. This is the application of how we're going to go forward with this. If you don't have that in place, then what are you doing? I believe that I once wrote in a play that it's better to kill someone than to take his hope away.
Yeah.
So that is, if you create something like that, if there is proper investment in the arts and people start understanding what it can do for the human being, how the human being's mind opens up, what he is, how he is challenged by others and challenging himself and feeling free to challenge whatever narrative is outside, because that is what we need, right? We need a country of free thinkers.
Exactly.
We need people that's able to make up their own mind. And the arts has always been something that has improved people. It's always been something that has improved confidence in people. I have been part of more than one workshop in my life. Oh, let me make this example. When I was in high school, we had a drama group, and there was a lot of us in this drama group, about 23 learners. And not all of us became actors. Not everybody that was in that group became professional actors, but the confidence that they left high school with, the way they can carry themselves, the way they can address a crowd. And I know, yes, I know a girl, for example, that's an introvert, a big one. But the moment you say, and please, can you address the crowd? She's out.
Yeah.
Immediately she's there. And it's a type of confidence that was built by that experience as being part of that group, being part of people that's being developed emotionally in a completely different way.
Yeah, and this exactly I hear from also singers who say that they've for example come from townships in South Africa where there was a church choir, and then they sang in the church choir, and this kept them motivated, and they learned so much about that. So it sort of lifted them out of their situation in a way.
Yes, it's got that power. Because it's got a mental effect on you, right? Confidence is it's a thing it's a mental thing.
Yeah.
Sometimes you've got too much of it, and sometimes you don't have enough of it, and it's the balance in between that causes that sort of linear line that you sort of in control of where you're standing.
But now, Christo, I know you've got 2 children as well. Are they also interested in acting and what Dad is doing?
Last year, I was writing a television series called Spoorloos that is created by Ilse van Jemmer. It's an Afrikaans show. It's a white done 8 episodes that I also directed together with Francois Coetzee. And one of the characters that myself and Francois and Ilse came up with was this young boy of 5-6 years old, and he's the lead character's son. And the whole story eventually revolves around this guy wanting to prove to his son that he did not commit the crime that he's accused of, because he doesn't want to lose his son because he went through a whole battle and stuff, and he's a single dad and everything that goes with that. And when we came to the casting of it, I said, no, you guys don't have to worry. I'll get my son. Because
Okay.
I'll get my son to do it. The boy doesn't speak a lot. It's got like 5 lines through the whole series for the times you see him. And I came home and I prepped him and he went, yeah, cool, he's in it. And we ran the lines, rehearsed. And then I said to him, okay, right. So now Daddy just wants to record this because I want to send it to channel.
Yeah.
And he looked at me and he said, why? And I said, no, because other people also has to see it. And he said, nah, I don't want to do it for them. I only want to do it for you. And then I knew, okay, right, he's not ready. But
that is so sweet.
he's 5. He was 5 at the time. He's 6 now. My daughter Lila is 2 years old.
Yeah.
She, her crying gives Medea a run for her money. But yeah, so will they become actors? I don't know. And I won't stand in their way if they do want to become actors or do want to go in the arts. I will definitely explain to them what it requires. Because they live in my house, they can see what you have to go through. There is a huge sacrifice. Last year, I left them in Feb. I saw them over a month later, over Easter weekend. I flew down to Cape. They went down to Cape Town. I flew down to go see them there. Then I flew back to go work, and I only saw them 3 weeks later for the first time. So when I saw them, they looked like different children.
Really? Yeah.
But that is unfortunately part of what we chose to do.
And now, and
so now,
in South Africa, you also you were talking about this production, and it's in Afrikaans. Do you do a lot of Afrikaans productions? Because it's a language that's not known over the world, but you still do a lot of work there in Afrikaans.
Yes, I work primarily in Afrikaans, especially writing in Afrikaans. It's my mother tongue. It's how I was raised. It's an indigenous South African language that was born in South Africa. It's the language of the slaves, right? It's the language of my ancestors, because they couldn't speak Dutch that well, but they tried to copy die Baas. And Afrikaans was born out of that. And whenever you speak Afrikaans in Holland, people look at you and they go like, "Oh, you it sounds good, but you sound like you're speaking Dutch like a baby." It's like you're starting to trying to speak Dutch, and that's very reminiscent of where the language was born. It was born in the kitchen, so it's a kitchen Dutch. And then later years, after all these wars that were fought, and when what's his name? Jager Afrikaner lost the war against the Hollanders, the free people started calling themselves Afrikaners, and now it's a language and a title claimed by white South Africa. But it never originated from them. It's not, it's not something that after the Boer War or before the Boer War, they came together and said, this is who we are and this is how we're going to speak.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Everything is born somewhere.
Yeah. So, and you do a lot of Afrikaans. You say you do a lot of Afrikaans, or mostly Afrikaans productions.
90% of my work is in Afrikaans.
Oh, okay. But that's wonderful that the language, because it's then a unique language, and it's wonderful that you can, that it can still live as a language, also in art.
Yes, it is important that South Africa's got 11 official languages. It is important that all those 11 official languages get a platform. It is important that they are all heard, because the speakers of whatever other language is just as passionate about their language as I am about mine, And although Afrikaans is probably almost in the minority of spoken languages in the country compared to isiXhosa, Zulu, English, and then probably Afrikaans. So it is important to keep that alive. It is important that people do keep on speaking Afrikaans. There was this whole thing about Charlize Theron, or Charlize Theron, who said there's only 44 people left in South Africa that speaks Afrikaans, and people lost their minds, and I couldn't understand why. It's a joke. It was said on a satirical platform, but you see, because people don't read further than the headline.
Yeah.
And then they make their conclusion from there, and then you've got the other devil, right? Social media, who makes up your mind for you.
Oh yeah.
And I couldn't understand that people are paying this much attention to Charlize, who said there are only 44 people left in South Africa speaking Afrikaans, while children are dying of hunger and we don't have electricity.
Yeah, yeah. No,
and that becomes important. What's his name? John Steenhuisen from the DA wants her to come and explain herself in Parliament. Really? She's a woman. Do you know who she is?
Yeah, yeah. But that shows you the focus again, that you were talking about earlier also. Yeah, the different focus. But now, Christo, tell me what is now the wish for you for the future? What are your what do you hope will happen in the arts, and what are your plans?
My wish for the art sector is that we get the support that we deserve, just like any other form of medium in this country. That it is taken more serious, that the value of what it contributes to society, that is being acknowledged. And that's probably not in my lifetime. Hopefully my son will see that happen. But I really do hope that the government, the ruling party at the moment, will open their eyes and see, and just for 1 second sit back and go, but we need this.
Yeah.
We need stories. We need the mirror of society to be held up to them. We need something to remind us who we are. We need people to challenge thoughts. And that is what the art has always done. Whether it was someone doing a painting, singing a song, performing a play, or doing a poetry on some street corner, it does form part of the heartbeat of what the DNA of society is made out of. For me,
that's wonderfully said. Yeah.
For me, I am adapting. I've been commissioned to adapt 2 plays. One that I'll do in Joburg in August, and that opens in Joburg in August, and another one that opens in Cape Town in October. And between that, I am in development with 2 more TV series that will probably only shoot next year. 2023, I worked very hard in 2022. I'd like to spend more time with my family, for one, and find more peace of mind. Try and switch off. Just let one compartment of my brain work at a time, and not let the hamster run through all of them at the same time.
I think many people can relate to that. That's a good way of saying it. Christo, it was so lovely talking to you. And whenever you come to Vienna, then please let me know. Maybe you'll come and put a theater piece up here.
Thank you for having me on the show. It was really lovely being here. I would definitely love to come do a show in Vienna. If there's people out there who's in the theater world of Vienna, my name is Christo Davids. I'm from South Africa. Invite me.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. Okay, Christo. Have a
Yes.
lovely day.
You too.
Okay, bye. Dankie, Christo. Bye.
Dankie, Petra.